So hi everyone, today I would be giving you some information on impediments and blockers. So in the previous video we had been looking at the Scrum and how a product owner attends a Scrum in order to clear certain doubts which might be impediments or blockers, and the various impediments and blockers that the development team faces during a project or product execution. So in this video I would be giving you some information on the differences between impediments and blockers and what are the common impediments and blockers that arise during the product development. Starting off with an impediment is an event, situation or entity that causes a disruption in the development pace at which the team works at. So generally when there are no impediments, the team tends to work in a faster pace, and the tasks and the outputs tend to be delivered at the right pace. But when there are impediments, generally it slows down the pace at which the team generates the outputs. So you can always look at an impediment to be a road that is under construction, or it has lot of pits, and it also is not well layered. So ultimately you would be able to reach your destination, but it will be with a lot of difficulty, with a lot of efforts you need to pass that road in order to reach your destination. So this can be taken as an example for impediments. The next one is a blocker. A blocker is an issue, bug or situation where teams cannot move ahead with tasks or even deploying the project. So you can always look at a blocker like a road that is being blocked completely either by a tree, or it's fully under construction that you can never cross the road. So unless you remove the blocker, only then you would be able to proceed and take the following steps ahead. So this is the difference between an impediment and a blocker. Blockers totally block you from proceeding with your tasks in hand, or even ultimately to the point where you cannot deploy your product. And when you compare impediments, you will eventually reach the destination, or you would eventually complete your task, or deploy your project, but it will be at a very slow pace because of the impediments you have along the way. So let us look at the common impediments that development teams face during product development. The first one is very common: ad hoc meetings. So when you do not plan your meetings out well, ad hoc meetings can slow down the pace at which teams complete their tasks, because every task has been estimated and you would be able to estimate a time for which the task would be completed. When having ad hoc meetings continuously, it will definitely give them lesser time to complete their tasks. So they would generally, the pace of completion of tasks would be reduced drastically. The next one is lack of the right skills. So when you do not have employees with the right skills, one is existing employees need to learn the new skill and then implement the task, which generally we know does not make sense. So either they would be able to do it fast, or they would take a long time to learn the skill and then implement, and even if implemented, we are not sure of the quality of the task being implemented. So always not having the right skills can slow down your pace of development. The next one is common: a sick team member. So generally having a sick team member might also slow down the pace, because tasks might take a little time to be completed. The next one is miscommunication. Not being able to communicate the requirements, or communicating any of the difficulties or any information or anything that is needed, can slow down the pace. So because of this miscommunication, everyone would be waiting for inputs or waiting for clarifications, which tend to slow down the pace of completing tasks. The next one is unrealistic deadlines. So having unrealistic deadlines can also slow down the pace at which teams complete their tasks, because they are constantly revising their work, and it's a huge work that needs to be completed at a short time. So planning, revising and rework generally will slow down this process. The next one is pressure from management. Having too much of pressure from the management can also demotivate the team and also cause an impediment during the product execution, because generally everything would be planned and it would be going in a particular planned manner. But with constant pressure from management, either it can be for more features or for more outputs to be given, this can also slow down the pace at which the team is moving in. So generally when you're overloaded with too many features or with too many requirements at one go, then the outputs that keep generating during that sprint duration tends to be less. The next one is frequent changes in requirements. So having too many changes in the requirements frequently can slow down a person from completing tasks or launching a particular release. So always try to avoid making too many changes at a time, because it will ultimately slow down the work that's being completed, and eventually you would never go for the next release. The next one is hardware or software issues. The next common one can be slow systems, internet issues, etc., that can cause people from not being able to complete their tasks at the right time. The next one is unavailable resources. Example, employees on planned or unplanned leaves. So when you are totally dependent on an employee or their work, and then when they are not available, it can slow down a particular the dependent employee from completing the task, because they would be waiting for the employee to give them the work, or they would be waiting for the employee to come and give certain inputs. So this can also slow down the pace of development. The next one is misunderstandings between team members. Not having a good rapport in your team can also slow down tasks, because no one would be helpful in helping the other person to clear doubts or to provide certain solutions or insights or ideas. So having miscommunications in the team can also create a very negative environment and also slow down people from completing their tasks, or creating a little bit of a negative environment and ultimately not being able to provide the best quality. The next one is demotivated team. Because of certain external aspects or personal aspects, usually a demotivated team is not enthusiastic enough to complete tasks at the right time. They would generally be very lethargic and slow in completing their task, which would ultimately affect the project release. So these are small common impediments that teams face daily in scrums. So let us look at the common blockers. So the first one is poor architectures. So always when your project or product architecture is very poor, not scalable, flexible, it generally causes the entire project or the product's architecture to be a rework. So because of this, you would never be able to ultimately deploy your product. The next one is technical environment failures on which the product is dependent on. When there are certain failures, ultimately it causes a block in deploying a product or a task. The next one is dependency on libraries and third-party software. So you should always keep in mind that having too much of dependency on third-party softwares or libraries can be a risk, because whenever something is affected, that's a third party or the libraries, if anything is updated, altered or removed, then you should make sure that your product will also be affected. And if it's going to be a very high level of dependency, then ultimately the entire product will be affected and there'll be a blocker there, which causes certain features or functionalities not to be available. The next one is constant changing of technology and languages. So always keep in mind, you should always use the right technology and language based upon your product requirements. Never keep changing technologies and the languages just because it's new in the market, because sometimes they may not be suitable for your requirement. So frequent changing of technology and languages can ultimately be a blocker for deploying the product later on in the future. The next one is serious ACL or security bugs. So every product that you develop, people look in for security. Having a product without security does not make any sense. So if your application has serious ACL issues or any security bugs, then make sure it's a very big blocker and it will definitely prevent you from deploying a product, because this can never be acceptable. The next one is complexities fail to be forecasted ahead. So generally there are certain complexities and certain situations that you wouldn't have predicted during estimation of your features or requirements. These complexities arise during the development phase. So these complexities, sometimes it might be really complex and it might take a lot of time, resource or effort, or it also might cause you to redo your entire work. So which this particular complexity can be a blocker in your project. The next one is dependency on other teams or team members' work. So in Agile, we have different departments and definitely different, microservices or different functions are being implemented by different teams, and ultimately things get integrated. So whenever a particular team or team's work is not completed, it creates a dependency and has a dependency with other teams also. So whenever there is a block with one team, it creates a blocker for other teams also. So these can also be situations where blockers are created. And the next one is lack of resources. So as I said earlier, it can also be an impediment, but sometimes not having the right resource, and when that is really key to the development or to the improvement of a project and you're not able to move forward, it becomes a blocker. Ultimately, you would have to arrange for the resource, get the resource on hand, and then you would be able to proceed forward with your project deployment. So these are some common impediments and blockers that teams face during the development, and I hope this was a little bit informative to you. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed, and do share your feedbacks. Thank you.